Christmas Eve is almost here. Guys, Christmas is definitely the best time of year to be making and selling signs. Billions of dollars are sold every year just based around Christmas decor. So today we are using the stencil of the month for December of 2024. This one's really cool. I think it's going to be super popular. Definitely you're going to need the carving liner for this one because there's a lot of super fine details. So in case you haven't heard it yet, happy Thanksgiving. Today you should be seeing this on the 27th. The 28th, that is our biggest sale of the year. It is our Black Friday sale. So it runs from 9 p.m. on the 28th, Thanksgiving night, clear through Cyber Monday, which is December 2nd, 50% off of almost all of our products. So definitely go over to makeawoodsign.com, check it out. If you've been waiting for the Black Friday sale, now is the time. You're gonna get some great deals. All right, I'm excited. Let's go make some sawdust and see how this thing comes out.
For this sign, we're starting off with a piece of blue pine that's 11 inches by 15. So all of our stencils, we try to get them the right size to where you can use them on a 1x12 board. And a 1x12 at the store usually means it's 1x11 and a quarter or something like that. So that's kind of how we base the size of all of our stencils, and this one's no different. Now most of this sign was done with a carving liner. When it comes to fine detail, you cannot beat it. The profile bit can do some detail, but for thin lines like the antlers on these reindeer, there's just no way you could do it because you would have to go so shallow that once you spray and sand it, you're going to sand all those lines out of there. There's a fine line you have to walk when you're doing really small detailed work, and that is you need to carve it deep enough to where once you spray it and sand it, the lines will still be there, you'll still be able to see it, and not just be able to see it, but it'll still have some depth to it. But you also need to make sure that it's a thin line, depending on the detail. So that's where kind of the learning curve comes into play. A good rule of thumb is if you have the carving liner bit, start it 1/8 of an inch deep, and then kind of figure it out from there. It just depends on what the lines themselves are. Now Dad's also doing the body of the reindeer with a carving liner, and that's a little bit easier to do because it's bigger, so you might be able to get away with that with the profile bit, but I don't think you'll be able to see the difference between the bottom of the legs and the hooves and things like that. So it's those little details that really matter with the quality of a sign. Something else that makes a really big difference in the quality of your carving is having sharp bits. Now, when I was doing my own carving when I lived in California and selling signs, I kind of had a hard time figuring out when my bits were dull or when they were sharp. And basically, a way to kind of figure it out is if you feel like you're having to pull your bit through the wood instead of guiding your bit through the wood, then it's probably dull, and that's going to make things way harder. We don't really classify our stencils as far as like beginner, intermediate, or advanced, but if we did, I would say that this one is probably between intermediate and advanced. This font is actually pretty hard to carve. It has the little tiny lines at the top and bottom of each letter, and also like at the bottom of the Y, the S's are quite a bit more loopy and have more artistic lines to them. It's not the easiest thing in the world to carve, but it comes out really nice. That's kind of one thing about what we do is usually the harder something is to carve, the cooler it looks when it's done. So it kind of makes it nice once you're done with something really difficult. It gives you that feeling of instant gratification that it's like, dude, that looks pretty cool. And this one's no different. The font is challenging to carve and some of those letters are really close together, but it makes a nice looking sign and it's a really good challenge to kind of test your skills and see where you're at. Something we get asked quite a bit is like how much these signs would sell for. And that's kind of a loaded question. There's a lot of different variables, the type of wood you're using, where you're at, the type of show you're selling them at. But when this thing's said and done, I would say between 50 and 60 bucks. That's just kind of a rough guess based on where we are. Now the next bit Dad's using is the profile bit, at 3/16 of an inch deep. And what he's going to do here is he's going to go in and he's going to carve everything else that needs to be carved. For the little Santa sleigh, notice that Dad actually brought the lines with the carving liner down to where he can meet them with the profile bit. You want to be careful when you're carving the same thing with two different types of bits that you aren't able to see where those two meet. So Dad's going to carve everything that he needs to do with these bits, and then he's going to go back in and do it deeper. It's always a better idea to start out a little bit shallow than start out really deep. And a lot of times as we're carving, we'll adjust as we go. So 3/16 is a good way to start, especially because for these outset letters here, Dad's got to be a little bit careful because he can't make them so big and make the line around them so big that it bumps into the letters above it. So 3/16 is a good place to start when you're trying to figure out exactly how deep you need to carve. When you're carving something like this, you want to be really careful that you hit everything. So the tops of the S's, the middle of the E's, those sorts of things, they're super easy to miss, but if you miss them and then you spray it and sand it, once it's all done, it's going to look super funky. So just make sure when you're doing this that you take your time and you look at everything that's supposed to be carved around those letters. Because like I said, if you miss it, it's just going to be glaring. Everybody's going to be able to see it. So make sure, go through with a fine-tooth comb and carve out everything that's supposed to be carved out in there. So that now that Dad's got all of his initial carving done with a profile, he's finished with the carving liner. He's going to drop that same profile bit down to 1/4 of an inch deep, and he's going to go around everything again. This is a really fast step, but it makes a huge difference when it comes to getting in those tight areas with a 90-degree bit to take out the remainder of the wood. And also, this is the biggest line he's going to do around the cursive line down there, because if he goes any bigger, it's going to bump into those letters above it and it's going to look all muddled. Now Dad's going to do the cleanup with a 90-degree bit at 1/4 of an inch deep. And what I mean by cleanup is he's going to go in and he's going to carve out everything that's still inside what needs to be carved. Notice that Dad doesn't just move left to right, or he doesn't just go up and down or whatever. It's just kind of a random pattern, and that's what gives the signs a really cool looking texture in the background of everything that he carved. Make sure that once you're done carving, you take a stiff bristle brush and you brush the crap out of that thing to get any loose chips, any sawdust that's clumped up in there. Get all that stuff out before you spray and sand. For the notched corners, Dad made this little jig, I don't know, several years ago, and it's just a piece of plywood with two pieces of wood at a 90-degree angle so he can throw his board in there, and he uses a 2-inch hole saw on the drill press to cut these notched corners out. Now for much bigger signs, we have other ways we do that, but for the small signs like this, man, this thing worked great. This whole process only took like, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes, and it gives a perfect match corner on each corner, and it looks really nice. For the edge, we're just going to use our 45-degree chamfer bit, and we're going to put a small chamfer on the back, and we're going to put a large chamfer on the front to give it a good clean finish. And make sure you sand those corners off too, otherwise those things are sharp, they could give people splinters. It just is not a good deal. Now because we're doing 2 different colors, Dad's going to tape off everything that's going to be black. So he's doing the green first, he's going to tape everything that's not green off and spray. And remember, use spray ink or use flat or matte finish. If you use gloss, semi-gloss, or satin, you're going to get bleeding like crazy, especially in this blue pine. There's no sanding that's going to get that out. Once the green is dry, then he's going to tape everything that's green off, and then he's going to spray the rest black. And now taping off, it's a good idea. You really should do it, especially because you don't want any overspray. And with a sign this small, it's super easy to get overspray on everything. To sand it off, he's going to use the 80 grit disc on the disc sander, and he's going to use a 120 grit disc on the random orbital. And make sure that you spray all your sawdust off, otherwise you take the risk of grinding that colored sawdust back into your nice white board. For your red outset letters, Dad's just using a Sharpie, and he's using the big chisel point one, which works a lot better than the small one. Remember something, when you're selling signs, color attracts eyes. People love seeing color on the signs. Whether you use Sharpie, whether you use paint, whatever you do, it definitely brings a lot more eyes to your work, and it stops people kind of in their tracks when they see something that's all wood but has a little color added to it. Most of the time, I don't really like using color, but I do know that they sell better. They just do. Now, once it's all colored, Dad's going to use the Rust-Oleum clear, and he's going to put a nice coat of clear on there to finish it off.
So there it is, you guys. I'm really happy with the way this came out. We were kind of going back and forth whether we do the green and the red, but I'm glad I decided to do it that way. I love the way it came out. Don't forget, guys, if you have any questions, let me know. Black Friday sale starts tomorrow, the 28th, Thanksgiving Day. Hope you all have a great Thanksgiving, and that sale actually runs through Cyber Monday. 50% off of almost everything, not router bits, but pretty much everything else. So thanks again, guys. We love you. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.